As the Colorado sun sets on Pueblo, a town nestled at the foot of the San Juan Mountains, a natural stillness occurs. It is a long way from the rough waters of the South China Sea, a long way from the sound of enemy missiles and battle cries, a long way from foreign jungles and months without riding home. The sounds of the rolling Arkansas River falling over a short spillway feels like music to their ears in comparison to the sound of the waves crashing against their mid-century warships. As they stood telling their story in the Fraternal Order of the Eagles, they were children when they first enlisted together, determined to give everything that they had for king and country.
I have today ordered to increase our active fighting forces by raising the monthly draft call from 17,000 to 35,000.
Due to the draft imposed on young American men in the 1960s, Bill and Fred would soon trade their familiar Colorado River flow for treacherous ocean waters.
Bill and I went to the service together. We went basic training.
He made you?
Yeah.
This is your family.
He made me go. He's the one that taught me.
No, I just told him I ain't going by myself, buddy.
How long have you guys known each other?
Since we were kids. Same neighborhood. We grew up together. Yeah, we're both. Our birthdays are like a week apart.
We're brothers.
You know.
Brothers, a term that best describes not only their camaraderie, but the relationships they made throughout their time in the service, fighting for a freedom that is not free.
80% of those people didn't come back home. But that's the way it was back then. But kids, what's so important now for the kids to know is that back in the day, which in my own belief, I think it should still be intact, is that every young person should spend some time to their country, to give back to your country, because this isn't free. This stuff, the freedom that you're living with, it's not free. There's people.
Right here.
Bill's known guys.
That's why it's not free.
Unbreakable bonds, as Bill showcases a fallen hero traveling tribute card from another longtime best friend.
This is a good friend I had all during high school. He went to Vietnam before we did. And about a year and a half after we were in, he was killed. And I'll never forget it. Good friend.
The ultimate sacrifice. Lives lost defending strangers' freedoms, but felt by those closest to them. Bill takes a moment to reflect on the importance of serving your country.
My name's William Chavez Jr. I joined the United States Navy from 1969 to 1973. I did 3 different tours in Vietnam, and I think what we need to talk about now is what do we feel about the country and the gentlemen that are serving right now. We all deserve their respect. They are our heroes, and what they're fighting for is what you enjoy every day. Getting up in the morning, going to school, going to college, having a decent meal, having your parents. Some of those gentlemen are sacrificing a lot of that at this point, and they are definitely our heroes. The time that we spent was long hours every day, sometimes 16, 20 hours a day, practicing, training, and that takes its toll. So you can imagine what these guys are going through in the battlefields right now. They are well trained, and they're fighting for our freedom, and I totally respect that. And I think America right now, does everybody respect what they're serving for? I think the majority is, but there's probably some people who don't realize what it's all about. And I think they need to understand that, and I think we need to steady it more. At the young ages that everybody's at right now, is to understand that and what they're going through. So I don't know, it's tough. I've lost friends in Vietnam and remember them to this date, and I'll never forget that, because they gave the ultimate sacrifice to give you your freedom. So please understand that it is hard to understand that, and I feel it right here. So please respect that.
With 211,454 confirmed casualties in the Vietnam War alone, it is evident that the very things that we as Americans take for granted are better defined as privileges rather than rights.
I'm Fred Miketa. The previous gentleman was Bill Chavez, my best friend. We went in the Navy together in 1969, graduated high school in 1969. Went in the Navy together, and we went to boot camp together, which was the agreement with the Navy when we joined. Back in those days, there was a draft, what was called the draft, and every young person when you was 17 had to register with the U.S. government to be eligible for the draft, which doesn't exist anymore. And so my friend and I decided that our grades weren't that great to go to college, and that's where the deferment came in. And if your grades were good enough, you got a deferment, and as long as you stayed in college, you could stay in college and everything would be fine. Well, once you flunked out of college, you're eligible to go to Vietnam. That's just the way it was back then. Bill and I come from a family of veterans. My dad fought on Iwo Jima in Japan, in the Japan theater in World War II. Bill's father fought in Normandy, and he was in the Army. But, looking back on the Navy, I was in there for 4 years. I couldn't wait to get home. But now that I'm older, I look back on that and look at all the friends that I made back then. We still stay in touch. Some are in Connecticut, some are in Pennsylvania. I go visit with them almost every year in May to New York. And, the Navy was a good thing now that I look back on it. Back then it wasn't so good. You spent long hours, like Bill said, at sea. I was in Newport, Rhode Island, stationed in Newport, Rhode Island. I was up and down the coast. I went to the Bahamas. We did cruises in the Bahamas. I just had a whole lot of fun. That whole time I was doing this, Bill and I wrote each other. And he would tell me, well, Fred, bud, I'm deploying again, back to Vietnam. I said, well, it's good luck, dude. But the good thing is, we're both here now. We both made it. A lot of people didn't. Excuse me. I've talked about being a veteran a lot of times, but now that I'm sat here and talking about it to kids, you are the future of our country. You don't have to do this, but the message I want to give to you is that your country is not free. Living here is not free, although you might think so right now. Just like Bill said, there's guys over there fighting in the desert, fighting IEDs, and getting blown up for you. That's for you. That's the most important message that I have to send to you. My service isn't anything compared to what these kids are doing today. Because, as I spoke earlier about the draft, we had to go. these kids over there now, and I call them kids, they're not kids. You are kids. These guys are 20, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. They're fighting real bullets. They're dodging real bullets for you, for your freedom. Don't ever forget that.
The struggle endured by men like Bill and Fred and those who served with them paved way for our modern-day luxuries. Lost in all of the conflict, though, is the need for servicemen to have a certain kind of mindset.
When you go in the military, they strip you, and there's a reason for that. They strip your conscience, and all you're there for is a machine. You are a machine.
We flew into San Diego. We got on a bus, and the first step off of the bus, somebody was yelling at us.
Yep.
First step. So we're out there doing push-ups right away. This is what you're in store for.
The clock continues to tick. Present-day life goes on, and wars like Vietnam become a distant memory. Today, when we see uniformed servicemen, often many thank them for their service, but this wasn't always the case.
I remember when we got leave every now and again, and I think me and Bill were on leave together maybe 2 times out of 4 years.
Yeah.
And we meet together with all our friends. But they would tell you, don't wear your uniform to the airport.
That was a mistake.
When you came home in a uniform, people your age would spit on you, because call us baby killers, because we were involved in the war. Mm-hmm. Well, it didn't matter if you were in the military service back then, Marine, Army, Navy, Coast Guard. It didn't matter. You got spat on because you were part of the machine. Back in that day, that was back then with Bob Dylan and all these folks, and they meant well, but they kind of lost the point of all of this. They actually told us, don't wear a uniform.
But now you see a little bit more respect for these guys that are coming home. Now you have people greeting them at the airport.
Thank God for that.
Thanking you, and that hits home. Mm-hmm. So I have Vietnam veteran plates on my truck and my car. And one of my neighbors came and asked me, how long were you there? And I said, I did 3 tours in Vietnam. She started crying, and then she apologized to me. I believe that got right here.
We were proud to serve and proud to be a force that were helping these people in these different countries. And just exactly what Bill said. And there was, when you got into port, there was a certain number of people that had to stay on duty to guide the ship in. But everybody else, no matter who you were, what you were on the ship, you stood around the railing of the ship and you pulled into port. Sometimes they cheered at you. Sometimes, I remember in Germany, they had a near riot. They wouldn't even let us off the ship because the German people were protesting the Vietnam War and this and that. But it was a strange and a very difficult time back then.
Though we live in a world that has progressed tremendously since the days of Vietnam, we must never forget that the simple freedoms we can't help but take for granted are the very freedoms that others gave everything for us to have. The legacy of a hero is not defined by the capes and the characters that we see in the movies. The legacy of a hero is simply the memory of a great name and the inheritance of a great example.